Do 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 do. Ba 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 ba. Do 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 do. La 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 la. Yes, indeed. Do 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 do. This is Sports for Real with Coach Hall. Right about just past midday here down here in sunny Florida. Had a little rain come through. Supposed to be cooling it off, but it ain't done much today. But it's supposed to be some more rain tonight, so maybe that'll cool things off. No matter how much rain they get, it's not going to cool this ending of the NFL season. You got two races going on. You got a log jam of teams that were trying to make it to the playoffs, and the other half are teams jockeying for position for this NFL draft. Now, we saw last night that the Falcons had a chance to knock off the Commanders to get themselves a playoff berth, but they blew it. And by coincidence, it's the Commanders who are going to the playoffs. It's been like 10, 15 years since they made it to the playoffs, but they sealed up their spot last night, which essentially eliminated Seattle. But Atlanta, they still have an opportunity because it's going to come down between them and the Buccaneers. And the Bucks, they have the Saints. That's a team they should be able to beat. And the Falcons should be able to get by the Panthers. But the Bucks are in the driver's seat. If the Falcons win and the Bucks lose, then the Falcons will go to the playoffs. But other than that, all the other seeds pretty much been decided. It's just a matter of who goes where. You're going to have three teams from the NFC North. You got the Giants, but the Packers, Lions, and Vikings, with the Lions and Vikings pretty much going for the number one seed next week. And then you have the South champion, which is either going to be Tampa or Atlanta. Then you have the Western champion, which are the Rams, and the Eastern champion, Philadelphia, and then you have Washington. So there's your 7 teams. But the flip side of that is who's going to get that number one seed. Matter of fact, who deserves the number one seed. I told you guys before that I go around and I talk to fans after the game in Jacksonville for this thing called Fango Media. And what we do, we talk to fans as they come out of the stadium and get their responses about the position of where their teams are and where they're headed. And I got into some conversations with a lot of fans yesterday, and they felt like that the Titans, after losing to Jacksonville, is probably going to end up with the 3rd seed because they didn't think there was any way that the Giants were going to lose. So I was telling the guy, not knowing what was going on in the sports world, in the NFL, in the early games, I said, with the way that the season has been going, it wouldn't surprise me at all if the Giants would somehow win a game to throw off their top draft choice position. And sure enough, I get home and I see that the Giants knocked off the Colts, who thought they were going to the playoffs. All the Colts had to do was win out and they would have gotten to the playoffs. All right, hopefully I can sustain for a little bit longer. But I was in the middle of talking about how the Giants had all set up where they were going to make it to the top draft choice. And just so happened for them, they happened to show up and they won a game. And I had just told the fans down there at Everbank Stadium that the Giants was going to mess around and win a game and throw everything off. And sure enough, that's what happens. So, all right, Bruce Lee says, I think the Raiders should use AOC at the start of the season. He's 2-1 in games he's played all the way through this year, and the one loss being to the Chiefs that they should have won with a bad snap. The quarterback draft class isn't that good anyway. Depends on who in Tennessee's camp. They won't stand. New England has the top pick. Get a quarterback. So the wish list that the Tennessee fans have of getting right there in front of them. All they got to do is not win next year, and they're good. Now, the problem is Sanders what they really want. If you look at all the games that he's played, he's done great, like every other quarterback. If he has time to throw, then he's going to give you fits. I never met a quarterback in all my years that can stand on that can throw off their back, and he's included. But when you get a little pressure on him, he can't seem to escape like he should be able to escape, and that hurts him. So if the college kids are able to chase him down and harass him and make plays against him, what do you think is going to happen when he gets to the pros? Now, Tennessee doesn't have the greatest of lines. So since they don't have the greatest of lines, if he goes to Tennessee, he's going to be harassed. So the question is, going from a recruit with no stars to a Heisman finalist. So you have to give the guy credit for putting in the work to get where he is. But the Raiders, you're probably going to end up with either Ward or Sanders, because the Patriots, they don't need a quarterback, and the other guys, they need a quarterback. And because of that, I think it's going to work out for everybody that they get exactly what they want. So the question is, where does Travis Hunter go? If New England has their pick, they're probably going to pick Hunter. You get a 2-1 player there. Of course, he's not going to play as many snaps as he's playing in college when he gets to the pros, but he can help on both sides of the ball wherever he goes. So the way it looks right now, I think Hunter's going to go with that number 1 pick to New England. And Tennessee, they're going to make sure they lose next week so they can hold that number 2 spot and get either the quarterback out of Miami or Shedeur Sanders. So, but I was telling the fans, the way that the season's been going and the way it's been going for the Giants, you just had to know that they were going to lose, going to win a game. And sure enough, they did. Even though they told me I was dead wrong, but, I just had a feeling that the Giants were somehow going to win a game. So that kind of throws everything off. But the question is, who do you think really deserves that number 1 pick? Jacksonville, that's a hard luck team. They lost all those games by 1 score. They lost, 12 games, 13 games? And at least 10 of them been by 1 score. So they're not that far off. The question is, what pieces do they need to finally get over the hump? Also, the question is, do you fire your head coach? Now, talking with the fans yesterday, they seem to think that the players play pretty hard for Doug Peterson, so they don't think that he should get fired. But I don't know. He seems to be wedded with his offensive coordinator, Press Taylor, and Taylor's going to use his loyalty and get them both out the door. So he's going to have to make a choice. I think if he's able to keep his job, I think they're going to require that they get a new offensive coordinator. And another thing that the fans seem to think that the team operates better under Mac Jones. Well, I'm not quite ready to put Lawrence on the bench, but I do think that Lawrence when he was in there, he was trying to press too much to try to prove to everybody that he should be getting that big contract that he has. So I don't know. So let's go back. Bruce said the draft wasn't good anyway. I already talked about that. He wasn't given a fair shot because they used Gardner Minshew most of the season. Then he got injured, and the draft pick is at like 9 now. Best case he could get Dylan Gabriel or possibly Milroe. Well, I think Milroe is going to stay in college. I got questions about Milroe. Milroe reminds me a lot of Lamar Jackson. Now, depending on who you are, you might think that's a good thing. But if you got a good running game and you can keep your teams in the game without turning the ball over, then Jackson's a good fit. But if you want somebody to stand in there and throw the ball when it counts, I hadn't seen Jackson do that. That's the only thing I hadn't seen him do. Yeah, he can run around and all that, but how much longer is he's going to be able to do that? It only take but one play. As much as they run the quarterback in Baltimore, he can get folded up at any time. Then it's going to come down to his arm, and he hasn't shown you he can beat you purely through the air. He has to have a running game. He has to be able to run outside the pocket and scramble. Now the defense has to pick their poison. Which do you want to defend? You have to take the running back away from the Ravens to slow Jackson. You can't focus on Jackson and the running game. Then you just chasing your tail at that point. So the only way you're going to beat them is to stop the run first and make him use his legs to escape that pocket. And when he can't escape the pocket and you don't have a running game, now it's hold on to your hat because he's got to stand in there and throw it. And like I say, he doesn't have a history of standing there and throwing it to beat somebody. All right. Bruce also says, I'm a Washington fan, and our O-line looks terribly, especially last night. Thank God Jaden can use his legs. Well, the thing about that is some of those calls are very questionable. You know, if you look at the NFL, if a guy's rushing the quarterback and he's engaged with the lineman, and if he falls down any kind of way while engaged with the lineman, they tend to call holding. That's not holding. You just couldn't beat the guy and you fall into the ground. Now, if I got my hand all wrapped up around your neck or got my hands wrapped up around your back or something like that, that's clear holding. But some of those calls they called on Washington last night, that wasn't a clear hold, man. So I don't know how they determine a lot of times when they call these holding calls, because if you're going to call every single questionable thing, then you're going to have holding on every play, kind of like what you have with the wide receivers out there in pass interference. There's no way those defenders can keep up unless they grab and hold a lot of times, and a lot of times they don't call it. And so you say, look how great this guy is, but when you look at the film, he's grabbing and holding an awful lot. Jalen Ramsey is an excellent example of that. He does a whole lot of grabbing and holding, and they say how great this guy is. I don't see it. All right. Yeah, the refs were not giving us a break at all. They helped the Falcons a ton. Yeah, they did, but you got to understand that, you know, Washington, they got to regain that reputation they had when they were winning all those championships. They're not just going to give you a call when it counts the most. Even Patrick Mahomes, he had to earn his reputation to get to the point where he can get those calls. And without those calls, the Chiefs don't tend to go very far. But I think if Jaden continues to play the way he's playing, he's going to get a lot of those calls himself. A lot of the benefit of the doubt is going to come Washington's way. Speaking of Washington, it was a lot of people were getting excited about the possibility that they were going to rename the team the Redskins. To me, I grew up with the Redskins, and I'm far more Redskins than I ever be Commander. So you tell me, do you think the name should go back to, do you think the name should stay Commanders, something else, or Redskins? What do you think? So I would love for us to get Higgins or Wilson in the offseason to have on the other side of McLaurin. The kids have been doing better than Noah Brown and working our O-line and run defense. Well, you guys have made remarkable leaps. And I think if you continue to stick with the same coaching staff and make the tweaks that you need, then you have opportunity to get really good. So it's not a fluke that you are where you are. All it takes is one or two players, man, because it's about this much difference between the worst team and the best team in the NFL. That's why you have all those upsets all the time. So don't worry about who you get. Just make sure you get the right one, because they're out there. It's just a matter of picking the right one. But I think it depends on where you go in the playoffs. They're looking at a 6 or a 7 seed right now. And if you're a 6 seed, then you're going to get one of those Philadelphia's or Minnesota, whoever comes out of that quagmire you have in the NFC North. That's probably where you're going to go in the first round. Yeah, I would love for it to go back most of my life. They were the Redskins. I'm cool with the name now, though I already got some gear, so it's cool with me. Yeah, I can agree with that. It's just, don't expect me to get used to it anytime soon. Brian Fogler says, roll tide. Well, Michigan said they're going to roll you tomorrow. What are you going to do about that, man? So, you know, 2 years in a row, you can't lose to Michigan, especially with the kind of year they had. They still really don't have a quarterback. So if you can't beat Michigan, then what are you going to say about your playoff chances? And it's been awfully remarkable how the SEC has been quiet after Tennessee got whipped by Ohio State. Nobody said anything about who deserves to be in the playoffs. But before that, you couldn't shut SEC people up. And if Alabama was to get beat by Michigan again tomorrow with no quarterback, then the SEC, maybe they weren't so good this year. But that all remains to be seen. And Georgia right now is doing the work of Alabama. Alabama is still the bell cow of the SEC, and probably always will be that way. So with Alabama out, Georgia has to take that up. And Georgia has a real good shot to beat Notre Dame. They also have a real good shot to get knocked off by Notre Dame. So we'll see how the SEC does on Tuesday and Wednesday. Well, actually on Wednesday, because Tuesday you got Boise State and Penn State. That should be a good game. And primarily we want to see if Boise State going to be able to run the football. If they're able to run the football, Penn State might be in a little bit of trouble. But if Boise State can't run the football, then they're going to be in trouble. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting that, you know, Tennessee fans are all excited even though they lost the game. They lost the game because they know their draft position had jumped them over the Jaguars, and they got another gift when the Giants actually beat the Colts, because that put the Giants out of that top spot up with everybody else. And right now it's New England, and they're probably going to take Travis Hunter because they already got their quarterback. It doesn't make sense for them to draft another quarterback. So that's going to be interesting to see exactly what they do. As far as today, you just got one college bowl game, Music City Bowl, I believe. You have Iowa and Missouri, two teams not too far apart, similar style of play in on the defensive side. But Iowa, they play that old style, run the football. If you think of high school football, Iowa is the kind of team like these schools that don't have a whole lot of talent. They got a few big linemen and they can lean on some people. They'll run the wing tee or the I formation or something like that just to stay in the game, but they can't afford any turnovers or get off schedule. If they do, they got a problem. That's kind of what Iowa is on the college level. And then added to that, you have Missouri, who's pretty much a spread team. So it's an old versus new kind of thing, and it should be a pretty good game. And tonight, it would have been a great game if the 49ers were on schedule. They're going to take on Detroit tonight, and he's still capable of beating the Lions, but I don't think they have enough bullets to hang with Detroit the way they've been playing. And right now, another chance that helps the 49ers. They're going to have their eye on next week when they take on Minnesota for that number 1 seed. All right, Bruce Ling says in Detroit, 49ers injuries has killed them this year. The Lions should have no issue. Dan Campbell said they were playing starters. Well, he has to play starters because they need to stay in a rhythm, because the big game is next week against Minnesota. That game is going to determine the number 1 seed. I think the way that things have been going, I think Detroit's going to knock off Minnesota, and they're going to end up with that top seed. And that's going to make for a very interesting playoffs. And it's the way I see it and the way things have been going, it's Detroit's time for them to move on beyond what they've been doing in the past. Last year, they made great strides, but this year it seemed they were going to be steamrolled by all these injuries they have, but they seem to have overcome that, and they're just playing on a level right now, and I think they can beat anybody out there. What would you do with first round pick in Cleveland? Well, it all depends on where they're picking. The other day they restructured the contract with Deshaun Watson, so they're not going to be trying to look for a quarterback. They're going to stick with what they got there. The running game, if Nick Chubb can stay healthy, you don't really need that. I think if anything, you may need some offensive line help or maybe a defender. But the top picks that everybody's talking about, the Travis Hunters, the Shedeur Sanders, and the Cam Wards, all those guys are probably going to be going by the time Cleveland picks. So I think they're going to surprise you with some kind of lineman or linebacker type pick. But I don't really have an answer for who I think Cleveland would take at this time. But it's not going to be a quarterback or a running back. I know that for sure. But what do you think Cleveland's going to do against the Ravens, man? You knocked them off the first time, and the Ravens are all excited because they won a couple games in a row, and they got by Pittsburgh, and they slaughtered the Texans, who are overrated, by the way, been overrated all year. So they're in position to win the North. Cleveland has the opportunity to derail their hopes. But Pittsburgh, the way they've been playing the last couple of weeks, I don't think they deserve to be the AFC North champions, even though that's my team. But they do this kind of stuff all the time, so it's not unusual to me. And I think Pittsburgh kind of reminds me of Kansas basketball when they had Roy Williams. They were a whole lot better team, or a dangerous team, when they got other than a top 2 or 3 seed. If they were like 7 to 8, then Kansas was dangerous. But if they were 1 or 2, you can beat them. And I think Pittsburgh is the same way. Let them go on the road and earn their stripes. They'll solidify that way, and they'll play better football as opposed to having a home game and being a top seed. But that's just my observation of Pittsburgh over the last 45 or so years. All right, Bruce says I can see that. I would like to see the Vikings win either way, though they get a good squad and a great defense. Saturday, the Lions defense banged up too. And I think the Lions defense, the guy from Michigan, the edge rusher, he got hurt. All that's going to eventually hurt Detroit in the end. they're going to have to overcome that offensively if they want to win the Super Bowl. I would like to see the Vikings or the Lions win. Overall, it'll be a good game. Well, they're going to get it on next week. And I think if Detroit gets by San Francisco tonight, which they should, then it's going to come down to next week. And I believe that game's in Detroit. And it's going to be a good one. Sam Darnold, I think somewhere he's going to crack up down the line. He's been playing way over his head, like, he doesn't have a care in the world. But eventually, reality is going to strike, kind of like Cinderella at midnight. It's going to happen to the Vikings. Who's going to get them? I don't know. I think Ravens win. DTR is a terrible, and a lot of drop passes and drop interceptions is what killed the Ravens last time. I'm sure they'll overcome that. Well, the Ravens' terrible defense is what pretty much did them in. They've been playing a lot better defense, but then the kind of teams they've been playing, they hadn't been lighting them up either. Maybe you can get lucky like the Giants. Maybe DTR gets knocked out and they bring back Winston. I don't know how they determine who they start who, but I thought Winston was actually playing pretty good. He had them competitive. He makes his mistakes. He's always been a flip a coin type player, so it's what you get, But I think the Browns, with the connections that they have with the Ravens, those two will never like each other. And because they don't never like each other, I think that Cleveland has an excellent chance of beating Baltimore. But we'll see. What is your take on the Eagles? I think the Eagles, they're going to end up in the championship game. It's going to come down to can they make a play in the end. But they're a very good football team. And they got a few cracks. And if you can get them in a close game late, then you can beat them. But they have been playing pretty well over the last 5-6 weeks before they got knocked out by Washington last week. And I think yesterday you can't really count that because the Cowboys, they weren't 100%, and they're sitting a lot of the players out for surgery and everything. This is a depleted Cowboys team, even though they still shouldn't get beat by that much by a division rival. But Philadelphia is a very good team, and when you have a team like Dallas, you want to save some of those points because you're going to need them somewhere down the line. For sure, Winston is a gunslinger. He can throw for 400 or 500 yards, but still throw 2 or 3 interceptions. Well, who's that remind you of? Brett Favre, right? Brett Favre is a great advantage for whoever he had. When he was with Green Bay, he was a great advantage for the Packers. But at the same time, the Packers had Brett Favre because he's going to throw one away at the very wrong time. And he did that twice when the Packers should have been in the Super Bowl. He threw a couple of them away. And Winston, I think he's got a lot to prove. So if I'm the Browns, I would start Winston because, I don't know if they're going to re-sign him now that they brought back Watson. They're probably going to keep DTR just for the sake of, trying to save face. So Winston's going to be playing for a job. So I would play Winston because he beat the Ravens the first time. So while we all thinking DTR may start, he may not actually start. He may end up being the backup to Winston. But for any case, though, I think that the Browns have an excellent shot to beat Baltimore. But one thing for sure, if they fall behind early, look for them to fold the tank in the second half because they just won't care anymore if it's not a close game going into the third quarter. I don't think they have enough heart to continue to fight. Do you believe in the HBO Hard Knocks curse? Not really. Who would be cursed? You're doing the AFC North thing right now. I've gotten through the first 3 episodes, I believe, and you just hearing stuff from the coaches that you already pretty much know. There's nothing new there except for you get the pictures and you're hearing the coaches talk about the other teams that you wouldn't normally get. But at the same time, they also guarded. They might even be scripted, some of the things they say. But no, I don't believe in a curse. Either you're going to play the game or not. The ball's going to bounce wherever it goes. But I will tell you this, a lot of people have been saying that they think that the NFL is fixed. Notice how many close games they always have. You can be dominated for 3.5 quarters and all of a sudden you get hot and push the game and it comes down to the last minute. And a lot of people think that it's scripted and it's entertainment, and as the salaries go up, the drama increases, and there's credence there. I like to think that because of the nature of the game of football, it is not fixed. but a lot of people seem to think that. Matter of fact, I do ride share. I don't know if I told you guys this before, but I picked up a guy about a year ago, and he told me that he works for a company. He tells me, and I don't believe it, he says his company gets the results of the games. His company get the results of the games before they go final. So if that's true, then it really is fixed. But I don't want to believe that. So I want to stay away from that. I don't believe it's fixed, but I think the refs sometimes do their best to put their hand in it, but teams still have to overcome that. How you doing, Mr. Ricks? I agree. It's kind of like the NBA. They'll call a great game all the way up to the last 2 or 3 minutes. Then they start calling everything on the team that's supposed to lose. So I think the NBA is probably more fixed than the NFL. My dad said they have a whammy gun to disrupt plays. Well, that all could be true, man, but well, you never know. But one thing I find strange, I've been going to these Jaguar games talking to these fans. It could be a 20-20 game in the third quarter, and then all the fans start leaving. I haven't figured that out yet. Why would a guy spend $300-400 to go to a game, him and his whole family, just to leave when the game is on the line? Why wouldn't you stay and get the full value of the money that you spent? I don't get it. But that's what they do. So I don't get it. If I'm spending $300-400, I'm staying there till the clock goes off, and then I might linger in the stands just to, well, listen, there's no traffic in Jacksonville. If you go back and look at the live video at the end I did, there was no traffic at all. There was hardly any people in the stands to begin with, because the weather was bad. It wasn't necessarily cold, but the weather, it wasn't that, people got out of there is what I'm trying to say. And when they got out of there, how you doing, man? When they got out of there, there was no traffic. And the way Jacksonville is set up, they turned the streets one way, moving away from the stadium on the main routes. So once you get caught up in that, the traffic moves pretty smooth. And then the other side, once you get across those bridges, you're out of the traffic. So the traffic is not really an excuse in Jacksonville. Now, I hear Chicago is a nightmare trying to get in and out of. Philadelphia, that's not too bad, but they're right there by the bridge to take it into New Jersey. So, I hadn't really seen any bad traffic spots, maybe with the exception of Atlanta. Atlanta, it's in a good spot, but it's also surrounded by all those major interstates. And the only problem there is getting on the interstate, because you got so much traffic going through there. It's hard to merge in. So, but traffic is not a problem, man. But still, if I'm paying that kind of money, I'm not going to be leaving. I don't care what the traffic situation was. But that's just me. But I don't know. But what do you guys think about these college football playoffs, man? You think Boise State got a chance against Penn State tomorrow? Yes, tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow night, and then on the first, you got the other 3 games. I think Boise State, if they can run the football, it's going to be a good game. But if they can't run the football, then it's going to be just like SMU. I think the case with SMU, it wasn't that they didn't belong, is that the quarterback, I think it was a little bit too big for him. He was making elementary mistakes that he hadn't made all year long, and he get on the big stage, he just couldn't handle it. But I think he'll come back. SMU they'll be fine. But it'd be interesting to see how all these conference inter matchups go, especially with all the noise coming out of the SEC camp about why some teams didn't get in and why some didn't. And then they have Tennessee get blown away by Ohio State the way they did, after all the crying Tennessee did about why the game wasn't in Rocky Top. I don't think it would have mattered where they played. They just got whipped. Bruce said open soil love for Oregon or Georgia to win it all. Been pulling for them all year. Well, Georgia, they got a quarterback issue. That guy, Gunnar Stockton, he's let's call him an arrogant prick. What I get from him. I watched the high school football games, and I seen him play when he was up in Raymond County. I'm able to do that. If you get that NFHS network, you can go all over the nation and watch football, and that's all I do if you're a football junkie like me. So I've seen this guy play in high school. He was fine as long as he was playing against teams he could beat, but when teams that were able to stop that You didn't see all that cockiness from Stockton. And I think what you saw against Texas, Texas had no idea that the backup was going to have to come in and play, and they wasn't fully prepared for that. But this time, when Notre Dame sees the tape on Stockton, it's going to be just like it was when he was in high school. He's not going to come in and be able to change the energy level of his team the way he did against Texas. Going to be a completely different position being a starter, and I think that might make the difference for Georgia tomorrow. He's going to have to play well enough or better than he did against Texas to get by Notre Dame. So keep an eye on that. That's the thing to watch. How will Georgia's backup quarterback play against Notre Dame? Now, other thing, Notre Dame is not great at stopping the run. You know Georgia's going to run the football. So if Georgia's able to run the football, then they should be able to get by Notre Dame despite Stockton. But if they can slow Georgia's running game a little bit and make that guy throw the football, I think Georgia's got a problem. JT is crazy. Look forward to seeing him in the NFL. Yeah, the guy's better than what people think he is. And he was humble after he lost the Heisman. He said that he congratulated Hunter. He had no ill will against it, but he still thought he was the better player. And when you look at the guy, it's kind of like he's real strong. Kind of reminds you like a Saquon Barkley. You get a good hit on the guy, then he bounces off. And Derrick Henry, once he gets started, he's hard to tackle. This guy here is the same way. So I don't know where he's going to go. Raiders need the number 1 pick. Okay, Ray Romero, who would you pick with that number 1? The way it looks now, after New England secured the top pick when the Giants lost to the Colts, it looks like that they're going to end up taking Travis Hunter. But maybe they would take JT in the first round. But I don't know who the Raiders are going to end up with. Let's say the Ray Romero, but they screwed that up. You mean the Raiders? Well, the Raiders are what, like 4 or 5 now? The Giants screwed up their position. They had it made, man. All they had to do is keep on losing. But now that they put New England there, they're not going to take the quarterback, so they're probably going to take Travis Hunter. Tennessee fans, they want Shedeur Sanders. So after that, I don't know what will happen. So I wouldn't be surprised if Georgia loses. I wouldn't either. But like I said, if Georgia's able to run the football, then they're going to beat Notre Dame. But if they make that guy have to stand in there and throw that football, I don't think he's ready to do it yet. You know, I know he's cocky and arrogant and all that, but with the bright lights on him like this, I don't think he's ready for it. You know, he came out and played well against Texas, and Texas, they weren't prepared for that. And now Notre Dame had a couple weeks to get ready for him because we know that Carson Beck, he's had surgery, he's declared for the draft. You're not going to see him in a Georgia uniform anymore. I think Ohio State, Oregon will be close, but Oregon should win. Well, as close as that game was, I think that Oregon got the breaks when they had to get the break against Ohio State. But if Ohio State show up the way they played the other night, now they're not going to have the home crowd. It's going to be in the Rose Bowl, in a placid environment. But Oregon's won the last, 2 against Ohio State, but before that, they didn't beat Oregon. I mean, Oregon couldn't beat Ohio State. So I think if Ohio State come in and they don't make a lot of mistakes, I think Oregon is going to lose this time. A lot of times when you have rematches, it tends to go to the team that lost the first time because they have more of a motivation. Plus, Oregon's been sitting around a while. Ohio State is in a better rhythm, I think, than what Oregon is, and that little bit of extra rest might actually work against Oregon. If you remember the old bowl system where you played your games on New Year's Day, you've been sitting around 3-4 weeks. That's what Oregon's been doing. But now with this playoff thing, with the extra round coming in, Oregon is going to be at a disadvantage because Ohio State is going to be more of a rhythm. That's what I think. So it's going to come down to what can Ohio State do with the advantage of being more in tune than what Oregon is. All right, do you think Sanders will hold out in the draft? Go to the Raiders? I don't know how you can hold out in the draft. Now, Deion made the comment that if they don't, like for Travis Hunter, for instance, if he doesn't get drafted by a team that's going to allow him to play both ways, then he's going to have him threaten to go back to college. Well, he's gotten himself into a position where he doesn't have to. It wouldn't make sense for him to do that. What they can do is try to work for a trade behind the scenes, which normally happens anyway. But I don't think Dion's got that much pull where he can tell the teams who to pick and who not to pick. I just don't ever see that happening. Okay, last time Oregon, they get lucky with the clock at the end. Exactly. So it's going to come down to clock management. Now, the receiver from Ohio State, he's been complaining. He's saying all year long pretty much that call he got against him for holding was a bad call, and that was the difference why they lost that game. Okay, Cade, how you doing, Cade? You back from yesterday? Rick says, I think Boise will lose, but hopefully Genty makes some plays. Well, he's going to make some plays, but Penn State, they're not that style on defense. For Genty to be able to run the football, they're going to have to be able to throw the football. And it's going to be another cold weather game. It's not going to be a factor like for SMU going up there in that severe cold in Pennsylvania. It's not a whole lot of difference between Idaho cold and Pennsylvania cold, so you can throw that out. So these guys are going to be two cold weather teams. They're both going to run the football, and depending on how much the wind is swirling, it might just be a running game. So it might be turn back the clock, Joe Paterno type days, and who can run the football the best might be the one who end up winning the game. All right, you can 100% choose to not sign. Okay, last guy I saw do that was Tommy Frazier. He insisted that he wanted to play quarterback. What happened to Tommy Frazier? He never played it down in the NFL, never even got picked because you made your stance. Okay, fine. Do they really need one less athlete? You can be the greatest athlete in the world. People want to see you play in that league, but at the same time, it is no different than you come in and you get hurt. People don't see you anyway. So I don't see how you could choose not to sign. You can't go back to college. You would have to enter draft next year and get redrafted. Yeah, you can. You can go back to the college. Both of them still have eligibility. If you don't sign an agent, you can still go back to college. But why would you do that? And there's no upside to that. You're at the peak of where you are, and for you to turn tail and go back to college, what does that really say? But with the character he has, I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's going to go wherever, and he's going to try to make the best of whatever, because that just seems to be the kind of kid he is. Bo Jackson, I don't know if Bo Jackson refused to sign. I think he went to go play baseball. I want to say Tampa Bay. Did Tampa Bay draft him? I think Tampa Bay did, and he refused to play for them. So he had another sport, though. If he didn't have baseball, I guarantee you he would have played for Tampa Bay. Same thing with Steve Young. He went to play in the USFL instead of signing with the Bucks. And when he came back, then he got his rights. He eventually got traded to San Francisco. So it can work out in your favor. It's just going to take a little bit of time. But if you have an opportunity to take a position like that, why would you not take it? It don't make sense. I don't know. But I started off talking about which team deserves that number one pick. The Giants, I just had a feeling they were going to come up and win a game when they weren't supposed to. And sure enough, they did that. Fans disputed me down yesterday, say the Giants, they'll never win. I think it was Mr. Ricks told me that the Giants weren't going to win. That you, Mr. Ricks? But I told you that the Giants had the opportunity to win a game, and sure enough, they did. So now you have the Patriots with the top seed, and I think they're going to end up with it, and they're going to probably draft Travis Hunter, but they may surprise you by drafting Genty. Who knows? They got a quarterback, so they don't need that. So that will leave to go to Tennessee, what a lot of people think. All right, those guys get screwed going bad. Yeah, they do, but it don't take long to flip a team nowadays. A year or two, by the time you get ready to play, to get better pieces around you, then things start to get better. But Sanders is going to take his lumps. And his mobility to get away from the rush, I'm a little afraid, because he can't get away from the college guys. What's he going to do when those pro guys get to chasing him around? You think Saquon takes the record next week? It's against his old team? Well, that would be one for the record books, wouldn't it? That would be historic, and that's the kind of stuff the NFL likes. So I think he will play long enough to get that record, but they're going to pull him out, because the Eagles are penciled in as a number 2 seed. They can't get any better than that. So he'll probably go for the record, and then they'll sit him out. All right. You know what they say. You think he can go in the later rounds? Not sure if he's willing to do that. Money difference is probably a factor. What are you talking about? You talking about Sanders or you talking about Travis Hunter? I think Hunter is going to go in the first couple of picks, no matter what. He's not Michael Vick. No, he's not Michael Vick. And speaking of Michael Vick, he just took a college head coach job. I don't know how that's going to work. He should be able to win. All these pro coaches, pro football players that turn into coaches with the transfer rules pretty much in every sport now, in every level, I should say. It's definitely doing it here in Florida. College is that way, so it shouldn't take long for him to turn that around. But that Teddy Bridgewater, he took a year off to be a head coach at his alma mater in high school, and he won a state championship. So it's not unlikely, or it's very likely that he can turn that team around pretty good. Sanders is going early first round too. Yeah, he is, and he had shoes, giant shoes on the other day. So I think he had desires on going to New York. But with them with them beating the Colts the other day, now they're not in that top draft choice anymore. So it looked like he might just be going to Tennessee. All right, one of them teams that need a quarterback is taking him, and I see Pat's getting Hunter. I think so too. They need some receivers and work on their line too. Well, like I say, it's not a whole lot of difference between the worst team and the best team in the NFL. So a few pieces here and there, they'll be fine no matter who they pick. I'd be interested to see how well Hunter does wherever they like. Well, I gotta go. I got some things I gotta take care of. Appreciate you, Mr. Ricks, Bruce Lee, Ray Romero, checking in with me. But close out. Rick said you can flip a team but a bad organization. That's true. It's the difference between being a formidable opponent and an actual championship contender. All those are big statements, and let me pick back up with you there. I got to go meet my brother. We got to take care of some business. But I appreciate you guys. You have a great day wherever you are, and I'll be chiming back in the morning on you, if not later on tonight, during the Lions and 49ers game. So wherever you are in the world, make sure you have a great day, and I'll catch you guys on the other side. Until then, this is Sports for Real. Subscribe, like. I'm out. Bruce Lee said have a good day. Catch you on the next one. All right, appreciate it, man. Y'all take it easy, man. I'm out.